Former World Bank President James Wolfensohn says the fight against poverty is a matter of global security. Wolfensohn told Charlie Rose that developed nations need to deal with the world's poorest people or they will never be safe themselves.
What did you believe you could do for the poor in underdeveloped countries?
Well, first of all, we had a very interesting thing at the World Bank, which was that there were no bad debts, and you were lending to the poorest countries in the world. And yet there was the fiction that they had to pay you back. And so we got to a stage when I was there when we were lending them money in order to pay the same amount of money back to us. And it was ridiculous. And I said to my colleagues, how can you possibly get an effective development if all the people do is to take the money that you're lending them to pay you back your debts?
Right.
And it seemed so obvious, but I was supported by Michel Camdessu, who was running the fund, after a certain amount of discussion.
Right.
And we finally got that through, and tens of billions of dollars of debt were forgiven. And then the money that was going to these countries was able to be used for education, healthcare, and real proper development. And I think it was a very, very important change in the development cycle. But today, we still have a huge problem of people living under $1 a day, maybe half the world living under $2.50 a day. So we have an immense issue confronting us. It'll change a bit because China is moving fast so forward.
More people have entered the middle class out of poverty than any time in the history of civilization.
And will continue in the next few years.
Because the base is so low and the numbers are so large.
That's exactly correct. And in a few years, the same will be true of India. But unfortunately, there'll still be 1 billion, and then ultimately by 2050, 2 billion people in Africa who will still be trailing the world very, very substantially.
Do you think you failed or you think you succeeded?
Well, I don't think success or failure was possible in the span of 10 years. What I think I was able to do was to put a focus on this issue. And I believe that in better times than we have today, because today the leaders of the major countries are concerned about their own economies, not about economies that are very poor. They all have debt, and they're all concerned about how to get the economies moving again. But I think everyone must realize that unless one deals with the question of the poorest people in the world will not be safe. It cannot be safe. Apart from the humanitarian issue and the moral issue, you cannot have 2 billion people in the world out of 9 billion who are trailing the rest of the world so substantially. They will have 10% of the income of the people in China and India, and maybe 2 or 3% of the income that we have in the United States and in Europe. And there'll be 2 billion of them. So this is an issue which is not just for me as a dreamer or someone who's involved in development. It is an issue that all of us need to look forward to as an issue of stability on the planet.